From the wide open expanses of the Poconos to the condensed shortness of the Richmond short track, we are going short track racing here in Richmond. We're going to break it all down for you like we always do, give you best DFS plays and our favorite bets. It's coming up right now on the Backroad.
It's a non-points race, but it is a short race. Checker flag. That's what all this race is.
Two fucking spades.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Backroad. It's in between media's NASCAR betting and fantasy NASCAR show. Elliot Hicks and Rod Gomez here with you. Our fearless leader, Seth Woolcock, sends his regards, of course, upset that he couldn't be here a little bit. But he's having a good time on a family vacation. And Rod, we're going to have a real good time tonight breaking down the second race at Richmond, the Cookout 400.
Indeed, Seth, I'm completely jealous of you. Vacation has been a foreign word lately, so I hope you're enjoying it. You definitely earned it, and hopefully someday I get to feel what that feels like.
You've definitely earned a good vacation with all the work you put in, Rob. We were just talking about a women's soccer show you're doing and everything, and we'll let you plug all that at the end. But for now, let's get into it. Before we get into our segments, though, thanks to everybody who checked out Seth and my coverage from the Pocono Raceway last week. It was a lot of fun. Able to talk to some drivers, be right in the middle of the media center, really up close and personal, which, Rod, I know you'd done that before at Sonoma. It was Seth and I's first time with the media coverage. Super cool experience. Again, super grateful for everyone who tuned into the tweets and the videos and everything. Definitely will not be our last time doing the media coverage for sure. It was a lot of fun.
And you'll never want to do any other way again. Like, honestly, you don't want to watch it as a normal fan again.
Right. Like, I was thinking about that on the drive home. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I couldn't imagine being in the grandstands again. So definitely grateful for that opportunity. But all right, I guess while we're talking about Pocono, let's take a look back in the rear view at how the race went. So maybe the winner of the Pocono race, Denny Hamlin, getting win number 50 for his career. Maybe he is the new villain of NASCAR. He did it in a controversial way. He didn't wreck my guy Bowman, but definitely put the air on him to spin him out for third, get that other caution, and then force Larson into the wall. Whether he touched him or not, I don't know. It's tough to tell on that replay. But Denny Hamlin certainly, even more so, playing into that villain card a little more than he had before.
I don't know if it's the podcast. I don't know if it's him just really knowing that he's reaching the end of his career. So it's like, how do you want to be remembered at this point? And can you be remembered? And so we know that we're going to remember Denny Hamlin, but maybe he's putting a few more exclamation points onto the back end of his career. So you go, oh yeah, I remember that race when he spun out Kyle Larson. And honestly, you're right. You can't really tell. They've given us 15 different camera angles, and one, I'm like, oh yeah, he just took the air out from under him. The other one's like, oh, maybe they touched. And then the other one's I'm like, I don't even care at this point. I know there's no tape on Denny Hamlin's car, so the win's official.
Mm-hmm. The win is official. You know, there were some moments in the post-race press conference when they asked Chris Gabehart, Denny Hamlin's crew chief, about how does it feel to do it the right way this time. He was like, well, the car's not through tech yet, so I'm still a little nervous. But he got it done. It was official, gets win number 50. And, you know, I don't mind him being a little dirty sometimes. I don't mind him being the villain because in the next-gen car, it's just so hard to pass. And, you know, it almost, even though my guy Bowman, you know, it's been so long since he had a top 10. He's up there running in third, ends up with another confrontation with Denny Hamlin as I'm standing right behind all the crew in their pit box. You know, that was almost just as cool of an experience as if, you know, it had just been a normal third-place run. So at least thanks for that, Denny. How did your bets do for the Pocono race, Ron?
Let's just move on. Let's move on to Richmond. And listen, honestly, it was because there was a lot of, Denny Hamlin, we weren't really on Denny because, again, not for an outright win anyways. Just didn't think that he could do it again. And you know, we almost didn't at this point. It was pretty close to being Kyle Larson for the win. So yeah, it was just a little tough because there was some situations and there's some pit situations, some strategy calls that sort of backfired against us. But I'm glad you guys all had fun because that's really the name of the game, right? As I hit my mic.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know how Seth's full betting card did, but he had Denny Hamlin for the pole, but not for the win, which I thought was interesting. And then I added little sprinkles on the William Byron outright as well as the Ty Gibbs outright the morning of the race. Ty Gibbs, my faith in him actually ended up pretty well. He ended up 5th place, which was his best career finish, but neither of them getting some coin down. But always fun to lay a little bit of coin down and have a little bit of fun with it, especially when you're there at the racetrack, you know. All right, so let's take your advice, leave Pocono in the rear view and take a look ahead in the horizon forecast to Richmond.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
So we are headed to the Richmond Raceway in Virginia for the second time this season. Kyle Larson won in April here. 3/4 mile asphalt oval. And Richmond is almost a nice change of pace here. I mean, we've been to Pocono a lot too, but Richmond is a track we've been to twice a year, every year, for as long as I can remember. So it's almost a little easier to handicap, but also the books make it a little harder on us because the races seem to be a little more predictable.
Yeah, and honestly, the books are starting to catch up to us anyways because they know that we're getting into the part of the season where a little bit more predictability is in store for us. Like you said, tracks we've already been to, drivers are starting to get right into playoff form. And so, you know, as that happens, the teams that are out of playoff contention, they either gamble or they just start looking forward to next year. And yeah, books know that too. But Seth in the chat, buddy. Hey, Seth.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pull it up here. The happiest I am about this is that I was able to pull this off on the back end. We're actually live. People are actually watching us. And thanks to Wendy for hopping in the chat as well. It is just racing, but hey, regardless, we have a good time with it. So I think that we're probably on the same page here data-wise. Obviously, we can look back at the Richmond race in the spring, but also the shorter flat tracks. Of course, our good friends over at iFantasy Race with the shorter flat tracks. Of course, Phoenix, Gateway, New Hampshire, as well as that first Richmond race. Anything else really studying here, Rod, or is that about the crux of it?
I mean, that's about the crux of it. And as always, as we say every single week, it's really how are the drivers doing lately, because we've seen it a couple of times already this season where, you know, Kyle Busch starts out like a man on fire and then sort of falls off a little bit. I mean, and when I say falls off for Kyle Busch, it's not necessarily that huge of a fall off. Then he picks it back up. Then he has a couple of bad weeks in a row. Is this another bad week for Kyle Busch on a track that he's good at? I mean, that's the thing. Like, I know all the data points to Kyle Busch having a great day, but is he in his head? That's the question that we're asking this week.
Yeah, Rowdy definitely a little bit up and down this year with RCR. Looks like in the DraftKings price here, they've got him looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and hop ahead to our tire tiers. Alrighty, so you know it, you love it. It is our tier maker here, as we'll take the trees away so you can see Rod's lovely face here as I look for that banner. There we go. All right. So now you can see our board and you can see us. Happy for that. The DK leaders this week, Martin Truex Jr. has a salary of $11,000. Kyle Larson at $10,800. Denny Hamlin at $10,500. Kyle Busch at $10,400. Christopher Bell at $10,200. Harvick $10,100. And then Byron at $9,900 as we dip down a little bit. All right, Rod, who are you throwing in your ace here?
Is it a surprise to you? I'm going to throw him up already. Like, he's already going to come up on the board, and that's Kevin Harvick. 44 races for Kevin Harvick around Richmond. 4 wins, 18 top 5s, 30 top 10s. He has led 1,235 laps around this track. Nobody has more top 10s than Kevin Harvick here on this track. And listen, I know that Kevin Harvick has not had the most fantastical of last seasons, but time's running out for him to be able to go out with a bang rather than go out with a whimper. And tracks like Richmond give him the opportunity to do that, given that he's so 1,000% dominant. The last 4 races for Kevin Harvick, 8th place, 2nd place, 1st place, and 5th place. Started 10th, finished 5th, 13th, finished 1st, 7th, finished 2nd, 5th, finished 8th. So pretty good DFS days for him as well. Like I said, not necessarily the greatest of seasons, but he's riding 2 top 4 finishes. So 4 for car number 4. I'm just saying there's a little bit of correlation there.
Yeah, I'm definitely really high on Harvick this week as well. You know, he won here a couple years ago to, I forget if it was the first win or the second win in a row to lock himself into the playoffs. Certainly wouldn't surprise me if he does it again. In the short flat track rankings this year, he is in 4th and was 6th fastest in that speed ranking at Richmond. So I definitely like the 4-car. Apologies if you guys heard some of that sound out of my window. I promise it's not a Cup Series engine firing up out there, even if it sounds like it. All right, so for my A's, I'm going to go with the guy who's hot right now. I'm going to throw Denny Hamlin up here. He's not quite the crazy dominance that he had at Richmond. It seemed like he always run up front here. Obviously, he's had some wins here. He's been good on the shorter flats, second in total speed ranking in the Cup Series here. 10.5 is a high salary, but I think he's hot. I think that he just is – he's not putting up with any shit. He'll go out there and he'll get a win to get number 51 on the board. I'm pretty confident in that he's one of the favorites for this week.
I agree. Go ahead and put his teammate up there. Throw the 19 out. He bounced back after 2 rough weeks, right? To have 149 points rather in his win a couple of weeks ago, 54 the week before that. But listen, he's Mr. Consistency, 48.5 fantasy points per race for Martin Truex Jr. You want to talk about what he's done on this track? 16 top 10s, 9 top 5s, 3 wins in 34 starts. Martin Truex Jr. is good in Richmond. That is all you pretty much have to know about it. He did finish 11th earlier in the season, but before that, 7th, 4th, he won 5th, 2nd, won twice in a row, and then finished 3rd as well. So really good of the last few races for Martin Truex Jr. since he took over that 19 ride. I'm going to just chalk up earlier in the season to just a misstep because we know how good Martin Truex Jr. has been this season long. So give me that. I know he's expensive. I know that he's $11,000, but I'll still pay for that.
Yeah, for the guy who has, it looks like the most average fantasy points in races, and he's got the ability to put on stinkers here. I went to the Richmond playoff race in 2021. That was my first time back at the track in 10 years, and he really stunk up the show and led most of the latter half of that race. So I was going to go Truex, if not with Hamlin there. I definitely don't hate that. And hey, if an 11th is the worst he's done in the last few races here in the last few years, it's not what you want out of driver A, but if you pick well in your B's and C's, and 11th is not going to crush your lineup. So definitely could be intriguing. Even if that's at his worst here, you're still not resulting in that bad of a day, hopefully, if you pick well lower. I'll crack open the Chevrolet can here and go with William Byron. Byron, of course, arguably the most dominant driver in the series in terms of wins, even if he hasn't been quite as consistent as some of these JGR guys. He's as fast as it gets in the speed rankings here. First at Phoenix, first at Richmond, 4th at Gateway, averaging 44 points, not 34, that's Harvick. So, again, he's up there in terms of consistency as well. At this point in the season, these guys aren't necessarily the flashiest of picks. You're going to pay a lot for them, but they're going to get a lot of production for that salary. So sometimes you got to bite the bullet with the high prices, but they've been able to put on the performances this year to satisfy us for sure.
I concur. Let's throw his teammate up there. Let's put Kyle Larson up there. I know that it's difficult to pick for Kyle Larson, but listen, he's a little bit ticked off after what happened last week. He had a very fast car at Pocono and obviously felt like he got wronged. You can say what you want about it, but he definitely had a fast car. He was 2nd in total speed rankings in Richmond earlier this year. Look back at what he's actually done on this track in the past. Not bad for Kyle Larson as well, right? I mean, you're looking at a guy that won in the spring here earlier, 14th. Okay, but he started on the pole at the end of 2022, 5th place, 6th place since he's taken over that 5-car, sat on the pole twice over the last few seasons. He's a fast car here. I know, again, we're paying a lot for him. You're paying $10,800 for him, but he's a building block for at least one of your cash lineups.
Yeah, I like that pick. I'll stick with the Chevrolets here, but pivot over to RCR. We were talking about Kyle Busch just before this segment. I'll throw him up in the A's here. Of course, Pocono wasn't quite the day that he wanted. He won the truck race on Saturday, got KBM's 100th win. But in the Cup Series, both Seth and I were expecting better out of that 8-car, and he just didn't quite run as consistent. But rarely do you keep Rowdy down for very long. His total shorter flat track rankings is brought down from a bad day at New Hampshire, but otherwise has been pretty solid, was the best in total speed ranking at Gateway. So I've got some faith in Rowdy recovering.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do too, but I'm very cautiously optimistic about that because
Completely fair.
For Busch, he could very easily go tilt. And, when you watch one of the like Phil Hellmuth in the poker world, right? When he starts going tilt, he'll scream at the entire table and try to throw you off your game when in reality he's just throwing himself off his game. I feel like that's Kyle Busch right now in a nutshell. He's trying to throw everyone off their game, but he's getting thrown off. I don't know if I want to go to the B's yet, but I know I want to put Joey Logano somewhere in the midst of it. I I feel like he's a B plus, A minus, and I feel like he's being slept on a little bit. So put him in the A's.
Yeah,
And I'll say,
I'm good with an A minus here. I like that.
yeah, because I say he's had 17 top 10 finishes, 12 top fives, 2 wins in 28 starts. So he's been really, really good around this track. 7th place after an 18th place start in the spring. So that's a good DFS day for you. A 6th place finish after a 17th place in the fall of last year. So that's another good DFS day for you. Not good in the spring of 2022, but in 2021, 5th place finish, 3rd place finish, 3rd place finish in 2020 and 2021. So good solid finishes for Joey Logano around this track, and it continued this year. So I'm okay with putting Joey Logano there.
I think A minus is good for Joey. Good in the Penske camp there. I'll drop down to the B's here, and this one might be a little bit of a hot take, but I'm going to put Chase Elliott up in the front of Tier B. You know, obviously in the shorter flat tracks, he's missed all those races except New Hampshire with his injury. So it's definitely risky here because the 9 team has not come out and been quite as dominant, you know, and we expect him to run well in the road courses, but even he said that people are kind of slowing down on him as a road course ace. And this 9 car, obviously it's different when your star driver's out of the car for a total of 6, 7, 8 races, including the injury and the suspension. But I mean, this is Hendrick Motorsports. This is the most popular driver. This is a former champion. And we talked about the familiarity of Richmond, that this is the kind of place where you know how to put together a good setup. You know how to have a guy run up front. Or if you want to go the other way too, it's a track where you can take a bit of a swing, see if you can pull off something different. Josh Berry, I believe, had a good run here. I believe he was top 10 in the spring in this 9 car. So Chase Elliott, I mean, he's going to need a win at this point. And every week we're going to be on just the slightest bit of me is going to be like, is this week Chase Elliott's going to get the win? Because I'd be hard pressed to see this 9 car not winning a race before the end of the regular season.
I'm with you on this one too. I think a top 10 finish for Elliott is in the cards. And in fact, if you tune over to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, I have a prop with him and Busch. And spoiler alert, I do take the 9 over Busch because, like I said, 9's a little more desperate, 8's a little bit on tilt. So I like that as well. Let's put Brad Keselowski up on the board in the B's. Brad coming off of a bad week in Pocono, but before that, 2 top 10 finishes, a 6th place finish in Atlanta, 5th place at Loudon. But on this track, he's actually has been good in the past. And I don't mean like good, like super good, but 10th place finish in the spring, which for Brad Keselowski coming off of a terrible season last year, you'll take a top 10 out of that RFK stable, especially given the fact that he started 24th in that race, found his way up to a 10th place finish. So that's a very good DFS day for you as well. He's won this race as far back as 2020 in the 2 car, granted, but still he's won this race. And he had a string of top 10 finishes that ranged from 2016, about 2018 rather, to 2020. A couple of races in that span. He had an 11th place finish that broke up a couple of good top 5 finishes. But overall, he's just been very solid on this track. I mean, 13 top 10s in 6 top 5s in 27 starts, 2 wins. He's led 1,178 laps around this track too, which again, when you're in the front in this, he led 192 in that 2020 win. So that's a hell of a DFS day.
Yeah, he definitely knows how to run well around Richmond. And with RFK moving up their standards, top 10s are almost maybe a slight tinge of disappointment for Brad that he couldn't get up there and finish better. So I definitely like that pick. And it's still crazy how I've done a complete flip on RFK. At the beginning of the year, I was like, these guys don't have it. Brad doesn't have it anymore. They've continued to prove me wrong week after week by running better than I expected, even though they still haven't got across the finish line for a win this year. Of course, Buescher last year at Bristol, but I know Brad's itching to get back into victory lane too. So why not at a place like this? I agree. I'll stick in the Ford camp here. I'll throw Ryan Blaney up. You know, not super flashy all the time. Got obviously that win at Charlotte. Has done fairly well on the short flat tracks, 5th in the series, 2nd Gateway, 3rd in New Hampshire. 9,000 is a pretty good price for Blaney. 33.4 fantasy points on average. Fairly decent for a driver B. You know, I certainly would take that out of the 12 car.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe I've been burned by Blaney one too many times. It's just tough.
Again, completely fair. Yeah. Completely fair.
And honestly, the thing is that when you're watching NASCAR and you watch it with your eyes, a lot of times you trick yourself into thinking that something's happening and it's really not, right? When you go, oh man, Blaney's always in trouble or blah, blah, blah. And then you go back and you look at the finishes and it's like, oh, he didn't actually finish that badly. Why did I feel like Ryan Blaney had this horrible race when ultimately he had a top 8 or top 10 finish? And you're like, oh, well, I feel bad, but that's just the way it is sometimes. All right, I'll take Christopher Bell. We'll throw up the last, well, maybe not the last, but the other Joe Gibbs car up there.
The other Gibbs car will be thrown on there in a little bit. Just hang on for that.
just for quality's sake. Yeah, Christopher Bell, third in total speed ranking earlier in the spring. Actually been pretty good on this track in his career, right? In 6 starts, he's had 5 top 10s, 4 top 5s, including a 4th place in the spring, where I might add, he gained 20. He went from 21st to 4th, led 26 laps. That's a fantastic DFS day for Christopher Bell earlier in the season. So you'll take that from him all day, every day. What was that? The Toyota. He got 70 points that day in Richmond. So not bad for him there, especially given that he's $10,000. You get 70 points for you again. You're going to love that. So 37 points last week, won the week before, but can't really count that at New Hampshire. 37, 27, 58, 31. He's averaging 34.3 per race. So I think that'll be a little bit better here on a track that he's good at. And we know that the other Gibbs cars are good at it.
Yeah, see, Bell, I remember him just being so dominant at Richmond. Still a little bit salty. 2018, Dale Jr. had a pretty good run in that Xfinity race. Couldn't quite finish it off. Christopher Bell ends up getting another one of his wins there. But that's okay, Christopher. I forgive you how well you've done this year as well. I'll stick with the Toyota. This one, I'm not even 100% certain in this one, but I'm going to talk myself into it as we roll. I'm going to throw the 45 of Tyler Reddick up. He's got a pretty good speed ranking on the short flats. 9th in the series, 5th at Phoenix, 8th at New Hampshire, 21st at Richmond. Not necessarily the best track for the 2311 guys. He's at a price of $8,900, only averaging about 30 points, but this is a team that's been streaky. They've been unlucky at times. But I think Reddick is going to be a guy who, obviously, he's locked into the playoffs now. I think he's going to be a guy who is going to hit a hot stretch heading into the playoffs, and I think it starts here at Richmond.
Yeah, but there again is that whole eye thing, right? Like you watch and you know that Tyler Reddick is fast, and you see him running up front. The camera follows him for a while, and then next thing you know, you're looking and you're like, how did he fall back to 13th or 20th? And then all of a sudden he's charging back up again. So yeah, it's tough for Tyler Reddick. But again, like you said, the potential's there for a good finish. Let's put Ross Chastain. Let's put him in there. Feel like he's pretty decent for this. He was 5th in total speed rankings overall in the spring race on this track. He did have a 3rd place finish, led 16 laps in the spring race last fall, right? He started 2nd, finished 18th. That's not good for DFS, but he did lead 80 laps, which kind of makes up for that a little bit. So not bad DFS day for him there. Again, Ross Chastain's another one of those guys where you kind of want to, you just throw your hands up in the air and say, I don't know what to do with them from any given perspective, but the ceiling for Ross Chastain makes it worth at least a GPP play.
Yeah, he's definitely intriguing for sure. We never know what Ross can pull out of his hat. I agree with you there. This is surprising for me because this is almost a little higher than I want to put him, but I will throw the 48 up here just because the numbers are way better than I would think, even as a Bowman fan, watching with my eyes with the Ally purple tinted glasses on. 10th in the series at the total flat tracks and 8th at Richmond. He does have the win here, but it's just another one of these summer slump years for Bowman where even if they're running well, something will happen or there'll be some sort of pit road issue and they'll just end up with what they were probably a top 5 car at Pocono and end up 24th. Just something always happens here. So it's definitely difficult. The DK pricing almost has adjusted with that. He's down at 8,100. He is averaging a little over 30 DraftKings points. So I don't hate putting him in the B. But it's another one of those, I don't want to quite say a hold your nose one, but definitely a proceed with caution. Obviously, as good as the numbers are and as much of a little bit of Bowman bias you're going to get out of me every week.
And it's tough because, again, you watch all the other Hendrick cars and you think to yourself, how is the 48 struggling this much? And really, why is the 9 struggling as much as they are? But you kind of know the reason there. But yeah, Bowman was injured, but it felt like they were still sort of not finding their groove even before he got injured. And I don't know, it's definitely frustrating for that as well. So, all right, well, I'm ready to move to the C's if you are. And I think we can put Chris Buescher there as a C+ driver. And for much of the reason that we have, obviously, car owner Brad Keselowski up there. And for me, look, you're probably going to go off of what you saw last in the spring, right? Where he started 7th, finished 30th. I know that's tough to swallow, but for $7,700 in a C tier, I feel like we talked about the ceiling for particular drivers. The ceiling for Chris Busch, in my opinion, is what he did in the fall here last year, where he started 18th, finished 3rd. That's a fantastic DFS day for you. 16 place differentials and a 3rd place finish. That's kind of where his ceiling is. He's not going to win this race. I don't think he's going to win this race, but a top 5 finish, I think, can happen. Certainly a top 10 finish. And if he starts a little bit farther back in the field, I think he's going to charge right up to that 10th spot and get you a nice solid 10th place finish like he's done pretty much most of this season, right? Alongside his buddy Bread. He's got 8 top 10 finishes, 3 top 5 finishes. Not really good finish at Pocono, but 15th in Loudon, 15th in Atlanta, 10th at Chicago, 18th in Nashville, 4th at Sonoma. So some solid finishes for that 17 team. So as long as he can keep that going, I think he's going to return at least a good C price for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of RFK, and them running better has not yet resulted in a win this year, but you have way more of those. Start lower in the field because the qualifying speed maybe isn't as good as their race trim, but start in the 20s, end up in the top 10. And those are the kind of days that are better fantasy days than they are even out on the racetrack. So it definitely makes RFK very appealing in this B to C range, right where we have him. And this guy, if it weren't for, this is a situation where I want to put him higher because of what I've been seeing, but I'm going to put him lower because of the numbers and just the inexperience. But this is where I'll put the 54, Ty Gibbs. Obviously, I had the faith in him from Pocono after he went out there, ran well in qualifying, ends up 5th in the race, running up front the whole day. You know, there have been times where I've been back and forth on this kid. You know, he'd have some inconsistent runs or he would do some boneheaded thing on the track and I'd be like, come on, dude, like you're in this good of a car. You have this good of a name behind you and everything. He's a talented driver and he's starting to have more of that talent come out. You know, the DraftKings price, they're kind of adjusting. He's at 8,300, averaging about 25 points, which I think makes perfect sense for this C tier. I've got faith that the 54 is also going to heat up. And another one of these guys, and we'll see a lot of those as we move toward the C and D, that if they're going to have a prayer at making the playoffs, they got to ramp it up right now.
Yeah, and I don't think a top 10 is out of the realm of possibility for Ty Gibbs this week. And if he does, like we talked about with Chris Buescher, if he starts somewhere in the middle of that field, maybe tail end of the teens, right, back into the 20s, and he charges back for a top 10 finish, that's going to be a very good day for you as well. Speaking of somebody that will probably end up watching charge through the field, let's put Eric Almirola right there in that vicinity. Eric Almirola on this track, 22 starts, 8 top 10s, 2 top 5s. Granted, he did start and take over that 10 team in 2018. He had a 5th place finish here in 2018, an 8th place in 2020, 6th place in 2021. Couple of hard years, 14th in the fall of 2021, started 2022 and 21st after a 10th place start. But in the fall of 2022, 32nd place start, 8th place finish. In the spring this year, 32nd place start, sound familiar, but a 13th place finish on the day. He came in actually as the 16th ranked driver in there. So in speed rankings in the spring race, not bad for him. His price is at $7,300. And if he can return to you what he returned to that day earlier in the year, you're going to absolutely love what you get out of him. That was a 49-point day, which is fine. That's almost 7 full times what you paid for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely so risky to go with Stewart-Haas, but if you're going to go with one of the non-Harvick Stewart-Haas guys, Almirola is your guy here, just because of the experience. And every once in a while, he'll pull a good run out of his hat. I don't see why it can't be Richmond. So right here, we're about at the middle of our tiers. You know, there'll be some of these guys we won't put on the board, obviously. But I think the 99 of Daniel Suarez is perfect, kind of right in the middle. You know, do I think he's going to go out there and dominate and win or anything? I don't think we're going to see that from the 99. But obviously, it's good equipment. His numbers are fairly decent, 13th in total speed ranking among the series on the shorter flats. The price isn't too bad at $7,800. The average points hovering right about 23. I think he's right at smack dab in the middle. I think this is the perfect spot for the 99.
Yeah, I was about to pull the trigger on him here pretty soon. It almost feels like you have to sort of pick where you're going to go with Daniel Suarez.
Mm-hmm.
Elliot,
a little tougher now. Yeah.
God, I'm looking at this thinking to myself, where are we even going next at this point? Eric Jones. Let's put Eric Jones up there. I forgot to I feel remiss that I did not put Eric Jones up there. I actually think that Eric Jones is going to have a good day. I feel like a top 10 for Eric Jones could be in the cards. I called out Eric Jones top 10 at Pocono. He came through for us there. this team, they are so ready to make the move to Toyota right now. It's not even funny. They've got one foot out the door of this. And so I don't know. Like, I think I have a soft spot for guys trying to make their name before they head out the door. 12 total starts on this one. He's only got one top 10 finish. So it's going to be rough. But if we're digging around in the C tier drivers, I would put Eric Jones over almost everybody that we've got left.
Yeah, Jones is a good pick here. Jones is one of the drivers we got to talk to after the race at Pocono. Very nice to see that top 10 there. I do believe Seth had that bet too, so we can shout out that one as well that he was able to pull out there. It's a team that, again, they're very ready for the move to Toyota. They have not had the season they wanted to have, neither the 43 nor the 42, nor the 84. Jimmy Johnson has ran nearly as well as they would like to. But it does seem like this 43 team is starting to hit a stride, and it will be exciting to see what they can do, see if maybe they can pull a rabbit out of the hat, get a win, get in the playoffs, or at least build some more consistent runs to throw Chevrolet out the door and to be a really competitive Toyota team next year, which is what I'm expecting. But we'll get to next year. Go ahead, Rob.
And he does. Listen, he's got 3 top 11 finishes in a row. Go back to Chicago, which, I mean, whatever. He finished 16th in that race, but 8th at Nashville. So a string of solid finishes for Eric Jones. Not stellar, but solid. And in a C-tier driver, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely respectable enough now and respectable enough runs lately. Obviously, anywhere from the 7th to 15th races of the year, we were completely hands off a legacy, but they have improved in this 43 team. Will be one to watch in the C- tier the rest of the way, at least for the moment. I think I'll throw one more guy in the C's here, and then we're probably ready to go to D, but I will throw Bubba Wallace in the C tier. The short flat numbers are better than I thought. He's up there in 12th, consistent, 11th to 16th in total speed ranking at the shorter flats. The price is probably pretty good on him. 7,500, averaging about 27 points. Again, another guy who, is he going to wow us this week? Probably not. Is he another guy that's got to put together some solid runs to make playoff run? Yeah, and I think that they will start to do that in that 23 camp.
Yeah, again, though, that's another one of those guys where you just, and you see him running up front, and then, you go and you get up and you get yourself another beer and you come back and you're like, how'd the 23 get in 43rd? There's only 36 cars on the what's going on? But yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good place for him. Actually, let's shout out a couple folks. Rye Cape. What's up, Rye? It's good with you, my friend. And then HoovTube saying the Matt Kenseth disrespect is real.
Shout out to Matt Kenseth. And shout out to everybody in the chat. I would pull up some more of these comments, but I'm running the tier maker as well. That's taking up my screen right now. But we definitely will shout out some comments and some questions and everything in the parking garage props here in a couple minutes.
Do we want to go to the D's already? I mean,
I think it's time for the D's, unless you have anybody else to throw in the C's here.
No, and I don't even want to put him in the D's, but I'll put Austin Dillon in the D. He's a driver. He's taken the track at Richmond before. He ran here in the spring, but he finished 25. I mean, he didn't lose you points, I suppose, if that's really what you want to hang your hat on. But $6,700, you kind of want more out of a guy than 19 points. But the rest of these guys, I don't even see getting you 19. So yeah, let's put Austin Dillon there.
Yeah, I do have a feeling this is going to be a smaller D tier than usual. I will throw Michael McDowell up here. This team, Front Row Motorsports, Rod, I know you've been watching a while. I'm sure you remember when Front Row Motorsports was all but a start and park team. They weren't doing so hot. They were just throwing random restaurant brands that the owner had on the car. They get that win at Dega with David Reagan. And it's been a very uphill climb for Front Row, but the results are really starting to pay off. This has been over the last couple of years now that McDowell has put together runs better than we expect from that team. Obviously winning the Daytona 500 was the high point, but McDowell, on road courses, even on some intermediates, 21st in the shorter flats, higher than the guy we just threw up there, Austin Dillon, higher than Eric Jones, higher than a lot of different talent on this list here. McDowell's respectable enough, I think that, he's earned the D here. 5,900, averaging 26 points. Seems like some relatively good value. When they don't have problems, usually you're going to get an all right finish out of this 34 car.
Yeah, and I know that the Michael McDowell love is real, and I understand. But yeah, you're right. For a GPP play or for something that you're just throwing a dart at, I definitely think McDowell is worth it, especially at $5,900. You're not paying a whole lot for the opportunity.
There's a higher floor here. Obviously Cindric's in a better car. You got the Stewart-Haas Young guns, even a guy like Stenhouse or the Colleague cars, but they've got a much lower floor. We've seen a lot more 34ths out of those guys than we have out of the 34.
Yeah. Do we want to put Ryan Preece up there? I suppose we should probably put Ryan Preece. And I say that because listen, and I, I hold my nose with it as well, but he did have the 14th highest speed ranking here in the spring. When you're looking at our buddies over there at iFantasy Race. And he started 33rd in that race, finished 18th. So a pretty good differential for Ryan Preece on that track in the spring. Maybe he does it for you again. Maybe he gets you a pretty decent finish, but again, not something I would anchor my lineup on at all, because I think you're going to get burned by it more than you'd get rewarded for it. That was a 40-point day for Ryan Preece at $6,400. So a good fantasy day for him.
Yeah, I mean, with Ryan Preece, the smaller the track is, the more faith I have in him. A guy who came from short track bullring modified racing and worked his way into the Cup Series, I think across the board in the industry, we're glad that he got a shot in this 41 ride. Has it gone quite the way that we thought it would? Maybe not. Obviously things have been difficult over there at Stewart Haas, but anyway, the shorter the track is, on the big tracks, I don't know about Preece. On the shorter tracks, he's even run modifieds here at Richmond in the past. So he's got some laps here. It's just a matter of how well this car can take him and how the day will go, which is probably right about a D to D minus. So I don't hate that pick. Ooh, all right. Yeah, we got to do some digging here. I don't know. I guess maybe we throw Stenhouse in the Ds. Maybe the Fs. I mean, 22nd in the total speed ranking. There's the 47. 9th at Gateway. Fairly respectable run there. We've seen more consistency out of the 47. Calling him Recce Spinhouse, I don't think has been accurate this year. So big shout out to the 47 for that. But again, one of these, D to D minus plays, 6,500, probably a little higher price than I want, but averaging about 30 points. You could do worse. Obviously, look at the board. You couldn't do much worse, but you could do worse than 47.
I would say that. The 14th. I know, Ross. I know you're holding on for hope that Chase Briscoe is going to make this list. Go ahead and throw him up in the Ds. If we're gonna put Preece in there, we might as well put Briscoe up there. Yeah. And it's not because we don't have faith. Okay, wait, we do. We don't have faith that Briscoe is going to do well this track. Look, Briscoe. If you listen to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, Cody loves to fade him some Briscoe. And honestly, it's not for bad. I mean, it's not necessarily for a bad reason either, because Briscoe will pop up and have a good finish, but then he'll also give you 13 points like he did last week. 5 like you did a couple of weeks ago. He'll lose you 3 points, give you 8 points -2. Like, it's all fine and well to try to back Briscoe, but I mean, he got you 38 points on $7,800 in the Toyota Owners 400 over here in the spring. That's not what you're looking for out of a guy at $7,800. You want somewhere closer to 40 something out of him rather than 38. That's not very good return. So that's all I got to say about Briscoe.
Totally fair there. So I've got a couple guys I'm thinking of to throw in the Fs just because I have something more than one sentence to say about them. But I will give you first dibs on anybody else that you want to throw in the D tier or in the F tier before we round it out.
You don't even want to put AJ Allmendinger in the F tier because AJ is not even going to be qualifying his own car. So,
right. So he was. Well, I'll let you finish your thought first. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, because he's starting in the back, and it's not like he's actually improved himself when he has started in the back on this track as well. He's had some pretty horrendous finishes on this track in his 25 starts. So in the spring, he finished 27th after starting 25th, 27th place finish in the fall after starting 26th, 29th, 27th, 26th. I mean, even in the 16 car, he's just had 2 27th place finishes. If he's starting in the back, he's going to stay in the back. So don't like it for him.
Yeah, if you didn't know that, AJ Allmendinger is the only Cup regular that is going to be running Xfinity at Road America. So he will miss practice in qualifying in that number 16 car. Derek Kraus is going to take care of that for him. And this is kind of disappointing. I mean, I understand the whole mantra of Kaulig is trophy hunting. And I know AJ Allmendinger is a road course ace. But if they were running terribly, if he wasn't anywhere close to a playoff berth, I would get it. But, like, they're close enough, not they could point their way in, but, like, keeping up the consistency and being able to try to do something to build some consistency up to get those road course wins, which I guess you can make the argument he's running the road course in Xfinity to get laps, to go out there and win the Glen or win Indy road course. And I totally get that. But, like, if you're full-time in Cup, does the Allmendinger even want to be full-time in Cup? I've read that in some online circles that maybe he would want to go back to Xfinity, or maybe he's not enjoying the Cup experience as much as he thought that he would. It's just kind of a baffling decision. But hey, go ahead, hunt your trophies. If you can get the road course win, then I totally get it. If you win at Road America, that's a pretty cool thing too. But I was going to throw him in the Fs just to bring attention to that, but I think you're right. I don't even think you can throw him on the board.
No, I don't think so either. So who did you want to put in the Fs then?
I'll throw two guys in the Fs just because they're respectable showings from Pocono. The more what have you done for me lately? The 21 Harrison Burton, very rarely do we give him very much love here, but he'll pull a good run out of his hat once in a while. He was 8th at Pocono last week. Obviously it took a little bit of chaos for him to get there toward the end of the race, but worked out for that 21 car. He's another guy that there's some talent there. He's very routinely at a dirt cheap price, $5,500 this week, averaging about 21 points. He's, in terms of these dart throws at the back of the lineup, he's up there as one of my favorites for the week. And same for Corey LaJoie in the 7. The short flat track numbers haven't been all that great, but the renaissance of the 7 car is still continuing, still running better than we expect. He's just below Harrison at 5,400. He's averaging 28 points this year. He had a pretty good run at Pocono as well that got derailed kind of at the end. And Ryan Preece certainly had something to say about that at the end of the race. If you saw him climb inside of that 7 car and start to holler at him. But yeah, other than these two guys, there's just not a whole lot left. Do you have any other thoughts, or should I round it out here for us?
I was going to say, did you see that? Because you were there.
Right. Unfortunately, we were not that close enough. We were focusing on some other things, and we didn't even realize that incident had happened toward the back of the track, watching it toward the front. But that would have been fun to catch. Maybe try to catch Preece real hot for an interview. We'll have to. Part of the experience for Seth and I, it was a learning experience. So now we know to keep an eye out for those sort of things.
Where to be on the track. You know what? Put the 51 up there. Let's put Ryan Newman. Let's show Ryan Newman just a little bit of love. Yeah, look, Ryan Newman has actually done well in the races, and I say well because he hasn't lost you points like some of these full-time drivers have when he stepped in on this 51 car. He did get you 15 points off of $5,200. You might want more out of that, but oh well. But in the All-Star Open, when he came in and played DFS for you, he got 33 points on that day, and then 12 points in his only other race. Look, if you're paying what Ryan Newman's price is, which is $6,000, you're just kind of hoping that he doesn't lose you any points. He's been running SRX, right? He's the Rick Ware's trying to bring this guy in to solidify that 51 for a little while. Mm-hmm. And you know what? As an F driver, I don't think it's bad to give a little love to Ryan Newman.
Yeah, if we know some things about Ryan Newman, it's that he'll take care of equipment as much as he can. And he'll run hard in that 51 car. Obviously, he knows it's not anywhere near the best car on the track, but he'll do what they need to do. And it's definitely, especially after seeing Ware go and sign Justin Haley for next year, they're taking a step up. They've downsized from their 4 clunkers at the back of the field to just the 2 full-time entries. I'm assuming they'll have a second full-time driver with Haley in one of those cars next year. Obviously, that's just speculation. I'm not sure. But, Rick Ware Racing, we could be looking here in a couple of years, and Rick Ware could be in the same tier as sort of this front row motorsports type of deal, which even that much of a climb would be astronomical for a team like this. So shout out to Rick Ware Racing. I'm not going to put him on the board, obviously, but shout out to Live Fast Motorsports as well in that 78 car. He was one of the guys we were chatting with a little bit. We met a video guy for Live Fast, walk up to the car pre-race, and a gentleman named Matt introducing himself to us. Real tall guy, didn't really recognize him by his face. I'm like, hey, you with the team, man? He's like, yeah, I co-own it with BJ. It was Matt Tift, former driver of the 36 car who now co-owns it. And I didn't, it had been so long since I'd seen his face in a public setting. It's like, oh, wow, that's freaking Matt Tift. How cool is that? So shout out to the Live Fast guys. We know that their grind is still moving, even though fantasy-wise, it's never a sexy pick. So yeah, the rest of the board here, we already talked about Allmendinger. Haley as well. Who knows how they're going to handle those cars now with him out the door. And Colleague just having generally not quite the season they wanted at the Cup level. Todd Gilliland, Noah Gragson, Ty Dillon. If you've watched the show at all this year, it's still kind of the same opinion on those guys. Todd Gilliland once in a while can have a decent run. Gragson with legacy is tough. Ty Dillon's Ty Dillon in the 77. I'm still bewildered at how poorly performing Austin Cindric has been in that 2 car. That's the surprise here. It's like you look at this and it's like, okay, a lot of this makes sense. And then it's the Penske 2 car, the flagship. Rusty Wallace, the Blue Deuce, everything like that, not even on our board for a pretty average race. It'd be one thing if it was some particular track that Cindric doesn't do well at, but that's kind of been all of the tracks all year for Cindric. It's been just absolutely nuts. And then to round it out, the 15 is JJ Yaley. Again, with Rick Ware, occasionally you can get a decent run. He's had some okay runs this year, but not generally someone you're going to want to throw up in the lineups there.
No. Seth says throw BJ on the board. Seth, no, you are not here. We are not throwing BJ on the board. If you were here and in control, you could, but we are not throwing BJ on the board. Thank you very much. That guy.
Yeah, shout out here. Of course, Ross wondering where the 14 was, and Seth's response. Brisk blows. All right. Well, hey, we have a lot of fun with this. We are the show that tries to get a sentence out on every driver in the field because you never know if we don't talk about a guy and he goes out and throws out an 8th place like Harrison Burton. I'd prefer to not have that egg on my face. So we'll get a little more specific with it, though, in just a second here with our parking garage props and see who we have in mind for the week to come. Alrighty, so we'll start off with the outright markets. And Rod, I put in our group chat earlier, I was having a little bit of trouble finding some of these bets today. It took me a little bit to dig up what I needed to dig up. So I'll give you the floor here to start off.
Whew, yeah, outrights. It was only tough to pick an outright this week because there was so many, and we were talking about it just before we even kicked it on. The books lean all the way toward a certain way, but the way that the races have been going lately, it's kind of hard. And look, I know Denny Hamlin's up as a favorite. I know Truex is up there as a favorite. I know Larson's are up there, and you can't almost ignore it, but it's almost like, really though, because this is almost feels like a trap. So, and stay with me on this one. We're gonna say Harvick. All of what we talked about in the tire tiers for Harvick, as far as being just a fantastic driver on this track. Just to accumulate all that, because he's actually at 9-1 right now to win this race. Actually 7-1 on Caesars. He's actually dropped a little bit.
He's on my board at plus 700 from this afternoon. So if you got him at 9-1, though, that's pretty good. I like Harvick this week a lot too. Yeah,
I was gonna say at 9-1 was a much better price than 7-1. In fact, he's 9-1 on Superbook. So if you have Superbook in your area, he's still 9-1 on Superbook. I like that number a lot better than 700. But yeah, because again, he's among the favorites, but he's not at plus 400 like Truex. And we saw last week that Martin Truex Jr. was one of the stronger cars, didn't get the finish, right? Kyle Larson, he's at plus 600. I like him as well. I like him at 600 if you get him there. Hamlin at 7, Bell at 900, which I don't think he's going to win that race. And then there's Harvick at 900. I like that number a lot better. I feel better about taking Harvick at 900 than some of these other guys at their price.
Right. I mean, I liked Harvick at 700 on my board. I also have the Larson plus 600 here. A little bit jealous for those of y'all who have Superbook because I don't think we have that here in Pennsylvania. So definitely grab that one if you can. The other two I had on my board here, a little bit more longer shots. Caesars has an outright boost on Chase Elliott at plus 1,700, which I think for Chase Elliott, plus 1,700, fairly good number. Normally he would, back what we're used to for Chase Elliott at least, would be one of those favorites up there. Definitely not plus 1,700. So that's just too interesting of a number. And I think even without the boost, he was somewhere at like 13-1 or 14-1. I don't have that number in front of me because, well, if you're going to get the boost, you're going to take the boost. But and then Ty Gibbs being a plus 3,000, I think he was going to win or finish in the top 5 last week? It was definitely something I was optimistic about. At the end of the day, it's tough to hang with these rookies sometimes, but at plus 3,000 with the momentum they have going, I don't hate that. It could very well be worth a sprinkle.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one, but that's why you do it. That's why you throw out those long shots, is because you're really prepping for chaos in that one. So yeah. I like that as well.
If we didn't throw out long shots, I wouldn't have mentioned SVG at Chicago, and look how that worked out. So
exactly. Speaking of which, SVG, keep going, baby. He's going to continue on in some capacity or another at some point. You got to love that.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke to him getting a full-time Cup ride next year, which. Of course, it'll be interesting to see how he does on ovals and on a road courses. It'll be interesting to see how he does on a traditional road course in Indianapolis here in a couple of weeks rather than a street course. But either way, it'll be fun to watch. And it's so cool to see the international interest in NASCAR. That'll be cool when we get to Indy road course with a lot of other drivers there.
I agree. Yeah, that's all I got for outrights. I mean, unless you really wanted to take 10-1 on Joey Logano just to kind of, play around.
10-1's not awful for Logano. I don't hate that number. I don't love it, but.
Yeah, I don't either, but that's all I got for outrights. I'm not, like I said, I feel like outright markets this week is a trap.
Yeah, and honestly, for the position props, top 3s, top 5s, top 10s, there's not a whole lot that I found super sexy here. What do you have?
So I like top 3. Superbook actually has, and I feel like because, like I said, with the outrights, it feels like a trap. I feel way more comfortable taking a guy like Hamlin at plus 220 for a top 3. Truex at plus 110, almost even money for a top 3, but even he can get shuffled out of the mix. Kyle Larson, if you believe in the revenge narrative, at plus 180 is a top 3. I feel more comfortable taking those top cars and taking them as top 3s rather than outrights, because I feel like a top 3 could cash easier this week, especially on a short track. I mean, there's a lot of danger to be found on a short track, and a lot of bumpers to have to navigate. So if you can pilot your way to a top 3, I think that's even better. So I'd say Larson at plus 180, Hamlin at plus 220. That makes me more comfortable than taking them as an outright.
Yeah, that's an interesting outlook on top threes. I hadn't really thought of it that way before. Normally, it's like, obviously trying to pick the outright is tough, but that's just a traditional going back all the way to ancient horse racing is, who's going to win this race. The top threes, though, a car that could be good enough, but then could have a little tiny slip up, end up second or third, you're still getting pretty good odds for those. So I definitely will have to pay a little more attention to the top threes. The only top 5 one that I have here, they had a special for Larson and Hamlin, both top 5 on seasons for plus 240. Again, not my favorite number, but kind of neat that after what happened last week, they're kind of grouping them both together, expecting them both to run up front, which I'm sure they will. And plus 240 is not a terrible number for top 5.
No. And again, like you said, when you're getting like minus 160 for Truex, minus 130 for Hamlin, minus 130 for Larson, those are, and for Kyle Larson, minus 110, or Kevin Harvick, rather, minus 110. That'd be the only guy that I would feel comfortable taking a negative number on a top 5 finish is for Kevin Harvick. Because again, even as much as I feel like a good price on a top 3, plus 225 is way better as a top 3 than minus 130 as at Denny Hamlin, because now you're paying juice. And if something does happen and Denny Hamlin explodes, you're paying more money than putting, money on a potential plus money win for the top 3. So it's crazy, the logic, but kind of follows it down if you don't want to waste a whole lot of money this weekend.
Right. For the top 10s, I did have a few here, but some of these were rough at the top of the field. Maybe I just haven't paid as close attention to the books, but Martin Truex Jr. being a minus 500 for a top 10, that's about the wildest, the most juice that I've seen being paid in for a top 10 bet, especially this season. I mean, maybe it does get worse than that, but can't be much worse than that. I mean, damn.
Yeah, it was, that's vicious. And it's only gone up, honestly. That price was not there earlier this week. So people have been hammering that one. And I know that because I had gotten Brad Keselowski as a top 10 car at even money at plus 100. Now he's down to minus 110. So now the public's hammering that. But I will say one that has stayed true, and that's Ty Gibbs. I know you took him earlier, but I feel more comfortable with Ty Gibbs as a top 10. Plus 160 is a pretty good price for that.
Yeah, I have plus 160 Gibbs on my board as well. Tyler Reddick at plus 120. Again, this is more so of a gut feeling rather than the evidence. Sometimes that can be the way to go. I don't recommend it necessarily, but and then Daniel Suarez plus 220. Again, in a week where your favorites are at a minus 500, I never like paying the juice. It could be a tough bullet to bite to pay the juice, especially minus 500. That's not just a little juice box. That's a big old freaking breakfast glass of orange juice you got to pay on that one. But those three, and then a little
that one,
yeah, and then a little special of the 6, the 48, and the 20, all in the top 10 at plus 600.
I love it. Yeah, that's all I've got in the top 10 market. Like I said, it was a little rough going into that one this week. I felt like there were some good deals, but I had a hard time pulling the trigger on a lot of them.
Totally fair. Matchups, heads-to-heads, groups. Normally, I pick out a whole lot of these. I couldn't find a whole lot that was super attractive. I do have Group G over on Caesars, though. I kind of like the underdog here. Chris Buescher at plus 290 to finish ahead of the 10 of Almirola, the 99 of Suarez, and the 23 of Bubba Wallace, all of whom are at plus 230 to win that group. Any thoughts on that one, and what other matchups do you have?
You know what? For me, I love this one, and I love it even more now with the AJ Allmendinger news. They're giving you Eric Jones minus 140 over AJ Allmendinger. Allmendinger's at plus 110, but like I said, he's starting in the back, probably going to end up staying in the back. Eric Jones, we're pegging him for a top 10 car or very close to a top 10 car. Minus 140, you can work the math to make a little money out of that one. That one's not bad.
That's a little Capri Sun juice pouch I'm all right drinking, especially with how hot Jones has been lately.
I agree. So, yeah, I like that one.
Pretty solid. All right. And I pick out a couple of specials here. Keeping up the Ty Gibbs love, plus 1,200 for the top Toyota. Obviously, that one is extraordinarily difficult. That's why the odds are that high, because you got your Truexes and you got your Denny Hamlins and you got all those boys. But you never know. Maybe the 54 pulls the rabbit out of the hat. Blaney, 525 for the top Ford. Christopher Bell winning the pole at plus 600 with how well he's been at Richmond historically. That one I don't hate, even though I don't dip into the qualifying market all that often. And then Seth brought this one up to us. The race to go to overtime is at plus 200, and we checked the stats on that one. Well, Rod, you check the stats on it and found out that Richmond doesn't always go to overtime, especially not in this race. But this is, again, more of a this year thing that I believe. I wish I had saved this tweet. I should save these tweets like this more often because the community does such a good job with all these random stats like this. But 2023 is somewhere in the top 5 or 6 seasons already of most races to end in an overtime finish. So seeing that continue, especially after last week, arguably could have and should have been an overtime finish, to see that again this week.
Yeah, I don't know. I like it. Again, it's a plus 200 bet. Any plus money bet is worth it, but I don't know, man. They've got to buck the trend pretty heavy on that one. But I like it. It's fun. Speaking of fun, I've got one that'll have you watching the Belgian Grand Prix in the F1 and this Cookout 400 on Sunday.
Who are they pairing with Verstappen to win at Richmond?
Oh no. This is even
all right.
Yeah. So this one's giving you Daniel Ricciardo as a points finisher in the Belgian Grand Prix. He is now driving the AlphaTauri car that was vacated by Nick de Vries. And we're projecting him to finish in the top 10, which is a points finish in F1.
I was just about to ask you to explain that, so thank you for that.
Yeah. A points finish is inside the top 10 in F1. So we're expecting a top 10 finish out of Daniel Ricciardo and a top 10 finish out of Ross Chastain. We talked about him in the betting tiers. Finished third in this race earlier this year. Maybe he's due for another top 10 finish. Not difficult for the one car to do. You bet both of those together, it's plus 817. A $20 bet gets you $163. If Daniel Ricciardo can find his way into the points and Ross Chastain a top 10 finish in their respective races.
I do like that one a lot. A couple of really electric, really fun personalities there matching up. And again, a couple of guys who I know Ricciardo, it's tough with Formula One because it's been the same guys, or in this case, the same guy who's out there winning all the races. But that one's interesting. You said was that a Caesars, or where did you find that one?
Yeah, that's a Caesars special. So get down on that one.
Yeah, I think as soon as we get off this call, this show, Jesus Christ. As soon as we get done here, I think I might have to go down and throw some coin on that one.
Yeah, it's a fun one. And then you'll want to watch the F1 race. I mean, Look, we say it all the time. And Cody and I, the host of the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, we also host an F1 gambling podcast. And we say, listen, doesn't matter if Max Verstappen wins every single race. We still got you watching and hunting down the card because you're going to care who finishes 10th. You're going to care who finishes 15th because if that's Yuki Tsunoda finishing over Hulkenberg and that's the matchup we got for you, you're going to care. So it'll give you more to cheer for.
Yeah, and it certainly seems like there's a lot more variety a little further back in the field than there is out of front with that Red Bull car up front.
Indeed.
Yeah, I've really been looking for an excuse to get into F1. I really appreciate you throwing these bets out here with your F1 expertise to really pique some interest. Get me up early on a Sunday morning most of the time to really check out these races.
Or record them and then watch them in your leisure. Watch them afterwards. It doesn't,
That's a good point. Yeah, also very true. All right. Well, this has been fun as always, Rod. Let everybody know how we can best support you.
Yeah, find me on I'm on X at RJ Villagomez. You can follow me there. And there's a link in the bio to everything I got going on, whether it's here, whether it's the NASCAR Gambling Podcast on SGPN, whether it's Fast Money on For Frequency's Sake. I got a show that comes out on Fridays now where I give you fun parlays like that to sort of finish out your betting weekend. And then, of course, if you fancy soccer, I got World Women's Cup videos on Odds Shopper out right now, and I will throughout the rest of the World Cup action. So, yeah, it's best to find me on X in the club and having some fun out there with you. So, RJ Villagomez.
Yeah, it may be X now, but hey, it's still got the bird icon on my phone. We still got the bird icon on our graphics. We're going to try to keep this Twitter brand alive as long as we can because it has definitely been grateful to us at In Between Media over the years. You can follow me at ehicks39 and, of course, give us a follow at IBT_media. We're not done with the Pocono content yet either. We're going to obviously write up our tier list as an article for this week if you prefer to digest it in that way. And also we'll have a little more to tell about the Eric Jones story heading into the race on Sunday at Richmond. Of course, we know that Richmond, not always the most exciting race, not always the chaos you're going to find at a plate track, but these are still weeks where we can make some coin, and we certainly hope that we help you do that this week. Thanks again for rolling down the back road with us, and we will see you again this time next week. Enjoy your week, and best of luck in your bets at Richmond.